Hello, and welcome to the Eleemosynary Moment. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Brad Hathcock. Welcome to
W-
the special episode.
My favorite episode of the year.
Yes, and I am ready with my favorite movie shirt.
Uh,
My
is that
alien movie
is that
shirt.
a face hugger on the Mona Lisa?
It sure is, buddy.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. Friend of mine gave it to me.
Yeah, sounds like a good guy overall.
A good friend of mine.
That's good. Yeah. Um. So in the past, what we've done is I got on the shirt, everybody. We've done in the past is we kind of go through and we have like our notables that aren't on our top 15, and then we go through our top 15. I don't know if we have any reason to change that. Would you like to do that again?
Yeah, I don't see any reason why we have to change the format. I think it's worked out for us the past 2 years because that's how many we've done so far. This is year number 3. That's right. We're going into our third full year of podcasting, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you
it
remember
only
your
makes
number
sense.
ones from the past couple years?
I keep a list, like an actual running list. So as long as that list still exists, on my iPhone, then I would.
I know one year mine was Pearl, and the year before that, I don't know if I remember.
Like I said, mine kind of, they go away after so long, or maybe I deleted it. Obviously, I should have the one from last year, but I would have to look for it, to be honest with you.
I'm sure last year must have been like Terrifier 2?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think what came out last year. That's the problem, right? Like we said, we consume so much content that I completely botched the 5 best TV shows of the year by leaving off all 5 shows that should have been on the list in the first place.
I'm glad
Because I just forgot what came out.
I'm glad I filled the gap there. Yeah. It's funny, even after that episode, I was still going through going like, oh man, I forgot this one too. Like it was like kind of crazy. Um okay, well, let's just kick it off with I had 29 movies total.
Wow.
Those were all list eligible. So
I tried to limit my list for sure, but I have some. I probably put like 18 or 19 on here. I don't. I mean, they're listed in order. Um, there were some movies I watched this year that just really weren't all that great. And some movies I just didn't get to. Like I still didn't get to Nosferatu. A couple things like that that were considered bigger movies of the year. I know you weren't exactly a big fan of that movie that much. That it just exists in time, basically. So for me, I just picked my most memorable movies, and then I definitely gave my, top 15 there.
so how I do it is I usually I write them down, and what I do is I write down every movie that I think is noteworthy, and then I just pick from that list to build the top 15. I cross those out, and then the ones that I have left are the ones that I'm going to say are like noteworthy for this part of the podcast. So
Yeah, I got some for noteworthy for sure.
well, I got more than you than it sounds like, so I'll go ahead and go first. Like I said, this is all sucks to choose these because obviously they were great, and then I can't put them on my list. Late Night with the Devil. That was a great horror movie, interesting concept.
Also, one of my notables.
Yeah, I really like that movie a lot. My second one is Screams Before Silence. This is not a positive one at all. This is Sheryl Sandberg's documentary on the sexual violence of October 7th. It's not pleasant subject matter, but it was good. It was compelling. I will use that word because these women that were there and experienced all of this talk about it. The next one I have on my list is another documentary. This one's Saving. You have to do his name for me. Saving Sakic. Obviously, I'm still learning a lot about the history of the NHL. So this documentary was on ESPN, and I thought it was excellent, and it was a really interesting story.
ESPN produces actually some like really good
Some of the
sports
best.
docs and stuff like that. I mean, I think they're kind of undersold in that manner. Like the 30 for 30 is usually like pretty good. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
They do some neat stuff, and then obviously Amazon did some like really cool stuff with basically just last playoff season, I think, which was kind of like a documentary this past year from the last playoffs, and it had some really cool stuff in it.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the 30 for 30 on O.J. Simpson and the one on the 90s Chicago Bulls team, those are two of the best ever made. Next on my list is South Park: The End of Obesity.
Nice.
This is technically considered a movie because it's on Letterboxd, so I have it on my list, and it was really good satire. It was really funny. They still got it. It was great. So
It's one of the very few cartoons that after 20 years can still just keep crushing it.
yeah, and I like this. I like they're doing like longer formats, sort of like mini movies about certain things. They're taking their time.
Shit, remember when Bigger, Longer, and Uncut came out? It was like, nobody had really seen a cartoon movie like that in quite a while, especially based off a TV show. And they just killed it and kept like rolling some of that stuff. Like they kept bringing Satan back and stuff into the TV show and stuff later on. And I think Saddam Hussein as well, who was in the movie. And they just kept bringing it back into the show, from time to time. Like, so they keep calling back to that movie came out, what, 15 years ago? Something
No,
like that. Maybe even
we were in
longer than
high school,
that.
dude.
Yeah, I don't even know.
And yeah, they have all these eras of like the World of Warcraft era, and then they have like the anime era, and they have like all these, and now it's like they're in the post COVID era, and so yeah, the end of obesity was fucking hilarious. Okay, I've got a few more. Do you want to do one?
Yeah, one for me, I have. It's actually called The Beekeeper, so it's a Jason Statham
Oh yeah.
movie. Action packed, not a great script or anything, or even really a great storyline. He goes after this like company that stole this old lady's money from her savings or something. She was like scammed out of it. And then turns out he was some like special forces operator, and he goes and just starts like murdering everybody. I mean, it had some cool kills in it, some great action. Doesn't make the top 15 for sure, but definitely a really really good movie I recommend.
I'm glad you highlighted that one because I didn't see it, and that's why I like doing this because we could talk about the stuff. My next movie is one that I think after we do this, you should go watch it because you didn't see it, but it's called Filthy Animals, and it's about these two guys who murder pedophiles,
Mm,
and so they hunt pedophiles down and kill them, and
that's great subject matter.
yeah, that's a great. It's a movie that's like it's super hilarious. It's very it's snappy. Like for whatever reason, even though what they're doing from like scene to scene is very uh it's not like visually interesting, but like whatever they do to edit it, it's not like cut, but like it's constantly moving. And even though it's a movie about that subject matter, and there's like some other weird shit going on with like the flower girl that you'll know about, it just goes and goes and goes. It's pretty funny, and obviously I love, um, the killing of pedophiles. Um,
I would have to say my next is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. They kind of retconned the original and made a new original, higher budget. The original I loved it. It held true to just like the standard like slasher norms. And then in this one, they actually added characters of Tigger, and I think Owl as well. And Tigger was more of your like Freddy Krueger type of character where he just called like everybody bitch. Like I don't know if you've ever seen Rick and Morty, and they
no,
have Scary Terry, and he calls everybody bitch, but he has like balls for a chin or something like that, like something really weird. And Tigger just was calling like everybody bitch and then killing the shit out of them. I mean, he probably did the most damage. but they're opening up this larger world of like Winnie the Pooh monsters. They're calling it the Pooniverse. And so, actually, unbeknownst to most people, the Peter Pan movie just came out in a limited theatrical release over last weekend. I didn't get to see it, unfortunately, and now I'm going to have to wait till it comes out because it was only for 3 days that they put it out in theaters. So we'll see how that pans out. But they're also doing a Pinocchio movie this year, I believe, called Unstrung or something like that, or No Strings or something. So he's supposed to be evil, and they are doing a Bambi movie as well, which looks ridiculous.
I love this for you because I'm never going to watch any of these, but I'm glad you enjoy them.
Well, it is important to note that the guy who plays Art the Clown is actually playing Steamboat Willie in one of the horror movies that's being done for Steamboat Willie.
I might check that one out.
Yeah.
All right, you good?
Yeah, what's your next
All right,
one?
moving on. Baby Girls on this list. I didn't make my 15, and we already talked about it a couple podcasts ago. I think we did, so we don't have to talk about it.
Okay.
It's just I liked it a lot, and it didn't work for you. It totally worked for me. The person I saw it with, it didn't work for her either. So like, it's just, I guess, a taste thing. I was like way into it.
Some of it was just a little weird, but overall, I liked the movie. It was just definitely not top 15 material for my purposes, and for it to be on the honorable mention, it makes sense. You and I are A24 standboys, so I mean, it makes sense.
Unfortunately, this is all an A24 podcast, I think.
Pretty much, yeah. They'll love us here.
Yeah.
My next one is Boy Kills World.
I didn't see this one.
So I believe Bill Skarsgård, right? The guy who played Pennywise,
and Nosferatu.
He was in Nosferatu.
Count Orloff.
He did this action-packed movie, but it was very campy. I thought there should have been more violence in it than what they had said that there was going to be. So I kind of, it falls in this list because it wasn't where it should have been, in my opinion. But throughout this movie, he has like no voice. So the only voice he has is in his head, and it's from like a 1980s like arcade fighting game.
Okay.
So
I'm probably sold now.
Check it out.
Okay.
I don't think you'll hate it.
Okay. My next one is Immaculate with Sydney Sweeney. She's a really underrated actress because I think everybody just sees her as like the blonde, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's from that show, but
blonde with the big boobs.
Yeah, but she's really got chops, man, and I liked her in this movie.
She can act. Yeah, I give her full credit for that. I liked Immaculate. Generally when she's in a movie, they try to sexualize her, and this was the one movie that did the opposite of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Put her in like a nun outfit,
a nunnery, and
yeah, and like anytime she was not in her nun outfit, she was in like, I don't know, like bed clothes, I guess would be it, right? And so it was like the anti-sexualizing of her, and I actually liked the movie. It was very The Omen-esque, I would say.
Yeah.
Something like that, which ironically enough, the first Omen came out and it doesn't even make my honorable mentions because it sucked.
Yeah.
I fell asleep during it. And so, nice pick though.
Yeah, I like to highlight that one.
I'm going with Ungentlemanly Warfare. I know that was on your worst movies.
That's okay.
I thought it was notable. I like Henry Cavill, and I like Alan Ritchson, who completely stole the show. I like the fact that it's a historical depiction of something that was just declassified from the World War II era. Very smart. I think it was done well. But it's just a fun movie, in my opinion. And it's because Alan Ritchson kind of like takes it in that direction. Like it should have been or could have been a very serious movie, but they kind of went the opposite direction with that, and made it like kind of campy, kind of fun. So I enjoyed it.
Who doesn't like seeing Nazis killed in clever ways, right?
Oh, I know, it's beautiful.
My next movie is this one was just a it's such a hard one not to put on my list. I could only go okay, it's a different man. It's about a guy.
Oh yeah, I wanted to watch that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to pick one of his two movies this year. I couldn't put them both, and it's really good. It's about a guy who has like he's like deformed, like the Elephant Man deformed, like seriously deformed,
Yeah.
and he's like a very popular person among his circles, and then he gets a cure. Since you haven't seen it, I won't go beyond that. I'll just say that, like, yeah, it's an excellent movie.
Yeah, and Sebastian Stan's in it. He was actually a pretty good actor, minus obviously playing Bucky in stupid Avengers
I mean, he's good in
movie.
Avengers, but that's stupid.
I'm going with Twisters. It didn't make the top 15, but a fun movie. A couple callbacks to the original Twister film. I actually enjoyed the movie just as a whole for what it was, but it's not 15 worthy.
The best part of that movie is when those kids at the beginning, they're like,
Get sucked up.
yeah, they're like environmentalist, like kids from college, and they just all get
like,
murdered.
Fuck tornadoes,
Yeah.
and then they get eaten by one.
Yeah. Okay, this one sucked too. This one was painful, but Honora, I didn't put it on there. Honora was great. It was really weird. Just a really strange movie. That actress has like a very bright future ahead of her. I don't have her name in front of me, but
yeah, I didn't get an opportunity to watch that. Yeah, that's what I want to see as well.
it ends in like the most depressing way, but it's like it's perfect for that character, and yeah, perfect. It's a good movie.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Breathe. Yeah, don't even know if you've heard of this movie.
No.
It has Mila Jovovich in it, and essentially the world is practically uninhabitable. There are small sects of people that like live in these like bunkers that have air and stuff to them, and one of these gets like attacked and stuff. So it's about this like guy and his family, and they only have like so much air to breathe that's like left, and so they're trying to like find a way to like remedy that situation, because the guy is like some kind of like engineer or something like real smart, and they go through that. But again, Mila Jovovich is in it as well. Not a very well known movie from this year for sure.
Cool. My next one is Strange Darling. By the way, if any of these are on your list, then we could just talk about them later. This movie,
they're not. That's the thing.
Cool.
Everything we're touching is not.
Cool. Okay, so Strange Darling is like it's a small movie, but it's like what it does is it tells its story in like chapters, but they're switched around out of order. So the movie kind of makes you think that the Kyle Gallner character is abusing this woman, and then towards like the middle of the movie, you realize that the gender roles are swapped, and she's like the abusive one who's like torturing him.
Oh,
and it's a very clever little movie that I think is fun, and I recommend it.
nice. I'm gonna pick Trap. Definitely didn't make the top 15.
It's on my notables as well.
It's okay. Josh Hartnett was incredible in this, in that role. True to M. Night Shyamalan fashion, he has a twist in there that was predictable. And I think that was probably the likely issue with the movie, was that it was just predictable, and not overly violent I think it was R-rated, not overly violent for an R-rated movie for somebody who was a serial killer. So
I thought it was
notables.
I should also mention, like, I liked it too because it was I watched subsequent interviews with M. Night Shyamalan about it, and he is aware of its ridiculousness. It was intentional, and I appreciated that more because it's kind of a preposterous movie, but it's really fun. I just thought it was fun. It's like fun. It's a neat little puzzle box. And also his daughter does all the songs, and they're pretty good songs considering they were like
she wrote them all. Yeah.
So my next one is Deadpool and Wolverine.
Okay, that's actually made my 15.
Okay, we'll talk
So
about it
we'll
then.
talk about that then. My next one will be Cuckoo.
Okay.
Did that make your list?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Cuckoo was weird. The whole movie was very weird. Um, the final like little bird monster thing was very odd. Um, just generally a very out there kind of movie. I don't think it's everybody's cup of tea. Um, and you just kind of have to watch it to understand exactly what's going on. So it's a little hard to explain without giving too much away, right? So just I recommend it, but it doesn't make the top 15.
What's the actor's name?
Hunter
Hunter
something,
Schafer.
I can't remember. Yes, who was on Euphoria
Yeah.
and was awesome in Euphoria as well.
Yeah, a really, really good actor. And Dan, I forget his name, his last name. He's a kind of a character actor. He's in this movie as well. He's kind of the villain. He's
Yeah,
really good in it too. And yeah, I liked it as well. It didn't make either of these. It didn't make any of this. I just kind of thought it was interesting, and I liked it. Okay, I got two more. This was a documentary called "The Last of the Sea Women." I believe it's on Apple. It's about these women who they deep dive for uh, mussels and whatever they get at the bottom of the ocean. And
oh yeah, you talked about this before.
yeah,
Hmm.
so I guess I don't need to go too much into it, but I thought it was just a good documentary because it was like it doesn't have an ending really. It's like, oh, Japan is releasing all this water from Fukushima, and all that water is going down to South Korea, and these women are diving in the water, and it's got two things going on. The Fukushima thing is part of it, and the other part of it is just that there's these older women. It's a lost art, and there are like Instagram influencers who are also taking it up now. They're younger, and so they both kind of combine forces to advocate for Japan not doing that.
Yeah. I'm currently reading this book called Nuclear War,
Mm.
and it's called Nuclear War: A Scenario, and it actually talks about Fukushima and how close they were to basically losing Tokyo and like half of Japan forever, because had all six chambers melted down, it would there would have been like 150-foot tall like plume of like smoke and wind that would have like of radiation that would have just covered all of like Tokyo, and you would have lost Tokyo forever, because they said it would have been like 1,000 years before you could have lived there again. Um, so it's interesting that you brought up Fukushima, and part of that because obviously it's been leaking radiation into the ocean and stuff, which is why that documentary exists. So it's just an interesting note.
Yeah, they keep the water in the tanks and they treat it, and that's why the movie doesn't have an ending or the documentary, because it's an ongoing issue. So cool,
My last notable is Maxine.
cool. I got
So I don't think that made your list, but
no. So Pearl being my number one movie of one of those years, it's interesting because it's the middle chapter of this 3-part trilogy.
right.
I don't like I didn't like the first movie. I didn't like Maxine so much. Maxine has one thing going for it, which is like it totally nails that aesthetic of like that 80s just
Oh, totally
dirtbag
does.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to talk about it or
No, no, I'm good. Yeah, definitely watch it. There was like one scene in there that was very disturbing.
mm,
I think you know which scene I'm
mm-hmm.
talking about, when she goes down an alleyway. But other than that, actually a relatively tame movie that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, it's not as visceral as
Grotesque, yeah.
Pearl.
Some of
Yeah.
the other,
Pearl wasn't really either, but Pearl had, I don't know, it was just different, I guess. Okay, my last one is going to be Conclave. I really like this movie because they're trying to pick a pope, and obviously the acting is crazy. It's got like John Lithgow and Ralph Fiennes and all these amazing actors in it,
yeah,
and they're all jockeying for who's going to be the next pope, and so there's a lot of politics involved. But it's set on the backdrop of something going on outside the Vatican that they are unaware of because they're all sequestered. And so there's like bombs going off outside of the Vatican, and it's not explained, and they're all like, what the fuck is going on? So it's just like the backdrop of it I thought was more interesting than what the actual ending of the movie was, which I won't spoil, but it was I guess if I was a Catholic, I'd be pretty pissed off about that movie if I was honest, but I'm not, so I guess I just liked it.
I want to see that because of the cast, like, is unbelievable
Mm-hmm.
for that movie. The subject matter, I'm not a Catholic, so for me, the subject matter just kind of is what it is. But I find that process to be interesting. But I've heard it's such a good movie. You have said it was really good, but I think my wife might be interested in watching it, so I'm kind of like leaving that open. The problem when I do that is she's not always ready and willing to watch a movie the way I am. She has to be like in a mood to watch something or whatever. So it could take months for me to see this movie. So obviously, it never made my list.
I think I want to give it credit for one thing, which is that you make a movie about Catholics, and what does your mind immediately go to?
Pedophilia.
And it's not about that. So
It's not that.
it's
Right.
not that.
It's not Spotlight.
I mean, it's got an element of it in there, but it's not the plot. It's not part of the story, other than perhaps the John Lithgow character maybe did something to cover up something at some point, and
So they finally gave Catholics a break, is what you're saying.
well, like I said, if I was a Catholic, this movie probably would piss me off at the end, but I won't say why. All right, ready for brass tacks?
I'm ready.
Okay. Would you like to kick it off, sir?
I think I will. I'm going with number 15,
Da-da-da-da.
a movie called Kill. No one's probably seen this movie because it is a Hindi language film that I watched with subtitles on in the movie theater. And it is about 2 hours, I guess, long. And it is super violent. There was another movie that came out this year called Mayhem, and they were trying to bill it as like as violent as John Wick, and it wasn't even like a third as violent as John Wick. And then this movie Kill came out, and it initially was like not really on my list. But I just found out about it, and I went and used my A list to go see this movie. And phenomenal. I mean, it's kind of funny because there's a lot of violence, right? But the first, I don't probably like 45 minutes, nobody dies because nobody wants to kill each other because they're like, yeah. So these guys hop on to like rob this train that this like politician is on or whatever, and there's the daughter of this politician, and she's dating this like special forces guy, but on the low. So nobody really knows about this relationship. And so to avoid getting charged with like murder or anything like that, nobody's killing anybody. So he's just beating the shit out of everybody, and like everyone's getting their asses kicked. And then they fuck up and kill his girlfriend. So he's like, now you're all gonna die. And he just starts fucking people up. I mean, he took this guy's head and smashed it off of a sink like 15 times and then pulled his head up, and you just see it like smashed in, and then he smashes it one more time. There's a kill in there. I don't care about spoilers for this because you may never see it. He does what I call the Ghost Rider to somebody.
Oh boy.
He takes this like little oil can that he has for a lighter, and he kicks it into the back of this dude's throat and then lights him on fire, and his whole head bursts into flames, and then he dies like that.
Oh.
And that was like towards the end of the movie, but I call it the Ghost Rider, and it was a fucking fun movie to watch, man.
Well,
I highly recommend it. I do highly recommend it.
Yeah, I have to add that to my list to watch.
It's violent and fun. Like, take out the story is what it is. Like, you know how a movie like that goes.
Mm-hmm.
So take that for what it is, and then take out the fact that it's not really in English. You don't mind subtitles in foreign films.
No.
So I think you'll like it for the violence aspect of it and stuff. So give it a watch.
Cool. All right. My number 15. This movie had to be on my list because it was just wild. It's called Hundreds of Beavers. You can watch it on Prime right now. So this guy named, let me get the director's name, Mike Cheslick. He made this movie, and then he spent like 3 years on post production. And what the premise is, it's black and white, and the premise is that these beavers who are in like giant furry suits, they're like giant beaver people. They blow up his like uh his God, what do you call it? Like his distillery. And so he like wants revenge against the beavers. And so like the first half of the movie is him trying to hunt down the beavers and upgrading his kit. So it's kind of like a video game. He goes to this guy, and then if he delivers enough fur pelts to the guy, then the guy will give him the next upgrade he needs. And so he eventually learns how to like teleport around the map where all these like all these little buildings are. It takes place in like the middle of like a snowy, foresty place. It was really filmed in a snowy place. And so it's him doing all of that, and then at the halfway point he starts uncovering the beavers' plan. And these beavers are trying to colonize like the moon or Mars, and he ends up finding out that they've got like rocket ships and shit. And so he just like tracks down all these furry beaver people, and there's like bunnies in it. And the guy who's selling them all the equipment forces his daughter to marry him. And it sounds ridiculous, and it is insane. There's so much weird stuff in there. Like there's animated sequences, and it's very silly, but like it's nuts. It's bonkers. Like by the end,
I don't
you're
hate
like,
that though.
you're like,
Yeah, I don't hate that.
I was like, fuck these beavers, man. They're trying to take over the entire world, and we got like our heroes trying to save everybody. It was wild, and I couldn't believe it.
So I think one of the things that at least our normal listeners know about us, right, is we do not make this list based off of the fucking awards that stuff wins. Don't get me wrong, we hit on some big blockbusters, things of that nature, but we do not make our lists in a vacuum specifically because they win awards. We will watch fun, ridiculous shit and add that to our list because we want you all to see the stuff that you may not have watched before.
And this movie is a perfect
Yeah.
example of like nobody heard of it, nobody's seen it. This guy spent so many years working on it, and it's just a labor of love, and it's so cool. Every little detail, like even when they got like the guts of like an animal, it's all like a stuffed animal gut. It's like it's stitched together, like it's wild. It's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Nice. All right. My number 14 is a movie called Azrael. I don't know if you watched this.
I didn't. I'm aware of it.
Mentioned about it this year. So it's completely silent film. There's sound in it, but there's no words, spoken word, really, or anything like that. And it's about this girl trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world where the apocalypse. The apocalypse is actually like the what do they call that when Jesus comes back or whatever?
The Revelations and the
like whatever, from the Bible, and so that happens, and
the rapture.
Everybody is the rapture. That's it. Everyone is quiet because there are fallen angels that are coming, and like they can hear you, and so there's groups of people that like capture other groups of people and like sacrifice them to these angels, because they built like this cult around like getting these women pregnant by one of these like fallen angels and stuff like that to, I guess, try to, I don't know, maybe save the world or whatever they deem necessary. And it's just very well done. The story without words is told perfectly. It just, the fear is real there. They don't sensationalize the fallen angels. They just are like, they almost look like just a regular like human that was like burned in a fire.
They're almost like zombie-like.
Yeah, they essentially look like Paul Walker after his car accident. Like something like that. I know that's fucked up, but it's great. And this movie just it told the story perfectly, did it very well. I enjoyed it.
I think I watched it and it bounced off my radar. I don't think I liked it as much as you, but it
I
was.
think that we did talk about it. I think me, you, and other superfan Pito talked about it briefly in our group chat.
Yeah,
And yeah, it just he liked it. I loved it. It was very good. Definitely top 15 worthy.
that's why we do the list.
Exactly.
All right. My number 14 is The Vordelok. This was a French movie, and it's a Nosferatu movie. So it's about, the count. But what was fun about this one and why I think it's better than Nosferatu is that it's completely unique. It takes place like during the French Revolution or maybe just before. And so there's this like aristocratic French guy who, is the character in, Nosferatu, the guy who's trying to like get through whatever. And he finds this like sort of smallish manor thing, but it's very gypsy like, and it's in the middle of the forest. And the family lives there, and it's Nosferatu's family. But the twist is that Nosferatu is this like 8 foot tall like puppet, a creepy ass puppet. But then the rest of the characters are all actors, and so they're all kind of interacting with him, and it puts a twist on that Nosferatu story that's very strange, and it's very interesting. And the French nobleman or whatever, he's got like a fake mole, and he's very superficial, and these gypsies are all like, trying to like, he's like an outsider to them, and so it kind of takes place in that like little castle. And man, I don't know, it was just really wild and cool.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's just such a different kind of movie.
And that it being
It
French
sounds
was,
like.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very French version of Nosferatu. So like, even it being a giant puppet, a creepy ass puppet, but nonetheless was really
I
interesting.
I think it's interesting that we have like foreign films on our
I do too.
list,
Yeah,
right? And I will say you definitely watch more foreign films than I do, not because of a lack of interest in them on my part. I actually do have interest in foreign films. I think it's just that when I make my list, I typically do it at like the end of the year when some things don't even have release dates for the next year yet, and the list that I find of all the movies coming out don't typically have foreign films on them.
yeah, and
So I and which that's to my detriment
I just
for
find this
sure.
shit. I just find it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. You'll have to share with me some of your sources where you find these movies.
I get lucky. Okay,
My number 13 is called Land of Bad.
never heard of it.
Oh, it's let's see. No, not Kurt Russell. Russell Crowe. It like basically flies this like Reaper drone and stuff over for this like special forces team that has what's the name of the brother who like who played Thor?
Oh, the Hemsworths.
Yeah, so it's the
Liam.
other Hemsworth. Yeah, the one that like nobody knows.
Yeah.
Um, so he's in it, and
Luke
he's
Hemsworth is in it too.
yeah. Oh, did not know that. But basically, they are out in this like a special forces like wilderness kind of thing, and he ends up basically becoming like the only one, and he's running from a group of terrorists, I believe, or trying to find the rest of his team that was taken. And Russell Crowe is flying a drone over and like helping him out a little bit. So Russell Crowe's not in any of the action or anything like that. But it was done very well. Something I enjoyed. Um, and that's pretty much it. Like there's some good action in it and stuff like that. So, you know, it's why it's on number 13. But
All
it was a
right.
solid film.
Always here for Russell Crowe. My number 13, I will spoil because I don't think anybody's going to probably watch this. It's called The Coffee Table. It's an
I heard of that. It's like a horror movie, right?
No, not really, not really.
More of a comedy because it's horrible.
No, it's okay.
Got a
So
haunted coffee table, right?
the coffee table isn't necessarily it's okay. It's an Italian movie. I think it's Italian. It's about a couple and their newborn baby, and they go and buy a new coffee table. And she's pissed at him because he's sort of like obsessed with getting this coffee table, and she doesn't like it. I don't remember the exact details of that part of it, but about a quarter of the way through the movie, he drops, or I think he drops the baby on the coffee table, their newborn baby, and the baby gets decapitated, and the baby's head rolls underneath like a china cabinet, and he freaks the fuck out about this. So he takes the baby's corpse to the nursery room and hides it under a blanket.
Oh my god.
And then
I have to see this now.
Yeah. So
I have to.
So then his wife comes home with and they're having dinner with his brother-in-law, I think, and his wife. And so they're all having dinner, and they've got the baby monitor next to the table, the dinner table. And throughout the movie, he's constantly looking at the china cabinet where the baby's head is under. And also every time they want to go look at the baby, he's always trying to deflect. So then eventually he shows the brother-in-law, whoever the brother character is, the baby's corpse. And it was like wild, dude. I was like, oh my god.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's way different than I thought that movie was definitely going to be.
It's like an Edgar Allan Poe thing, right? Where it's like the head is under the floorboards, and he's like freaking out about it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very interesting.
All right, my number 12 was Deadpool Wolverine.
Okay, cool.
I know it was just on your notables. I did put it on here because it was fun.
It was very fun.
It was just a callback to all the old like Fox based like X-Men films.
It was a love letter to that era, and it was so weird that they did that.
Misused characters and everything else. They finally brought in the Wolverine suit, the yellow suit with the sharp ears and stuff. Like, they just did it right in that way, and they were making fun of the MCU and like the multiverse and all that stuff. It was just fun, like how they brought in Nice Pool, as Ryan Reynolds without the mask, and like it was, so he was Nice Pool, and like he was the only one that didn't have regenerative abilities and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the dog pool thing, and they had a lot of fun with that. They took the movie and made it hilarious and funny, which all the Deadpool movies are in their own right. But this didn't have that kind of storyline where they're just, okay, we're singularly focused on like stopping something from happening, right? It was like just a callback to everything. Like, and I just enjoyed it. Like, it's just a fun movie, well done. Highest grossing R-rated movie of all time
by a lot.
By a lot, yeah.
It was Disney Marvel's only hit this year or last year, yeah.
And I love how like they just don't show you Hugh Jackman being like all ripped and shit until like the very end, and they just had this like very like homoerotic relationship like throughout the whole thing, because that's what Deadpool does, right? He like makes fun of everything, and it was well done. Bravo.
Allow me to heap some praise on this one as well. Channing Tatum as Gambit, he finally got to do it, and it was perfect. He's so good as Gambit, and that costume is fucking awesome.
Dude, Gambit was always my actually like favorite X-Men, believe it or not. And so when Taylor Kitsch came in and did Gambit, it was totally garbage, and just, I mean, that whole movie sucked.
Yeah.
But like his version of that character was terrible. Channing Tatum nailed it.
And he's been wanting to be Gambit for like forever. Like before the MCU.
Ryan Reynolds supposedly is trying to get that movie made, and he's also now that they fucked up Blade reboot, he's trying to get them to do another Blade movie with Wesley Snipes.
And I gotta say, Wesley Snipes, great. I love that Elektra showed up because I never saw Elektra, but it was cool that she was there as like one of the misfits. And then there was like this. There's also like the bad guys live in this base that's like Ant-Man's helmet, and they have that. They have like the fire guy from one of those X-Men movies, and there's like a lot of just really esoteric, weird stuff that like it just works. I don't know why.
Did you see it in theaters?
No.
So I did. And when Chris Evans shows up and everyone's like, oh, it's Captain America, and that's what Deadpool thinks, is that it's Captain America, and then he turns out to be the Human Torch, and he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. That was great too, because like a lot of people wouldn't have seen the Fantastic Four movie. Like they don't know Chris Evans from that movie.
Right. Well, people were cheering when Chris Evans showed up, and then, like it turns out to be the Human Torch, and everyone's like, oh.
And also the end credits of that movie too, I loved because they were just outtakes from those old X-Men movies, and I mean those were like the original sort of connected universe comic book movies, other than Spider-Man, right? So
it was just a great callback. I mean, that's what you would have wanted in a movie like that. I think
it hit every note.
Yeah, because it wasn't. That movie could stand alone from the other Deadpool movies, like just as this like song to like the past movies. And obviously, Ryan Reynolds experienced that with X-Men Wolverine or whatever, being so terrible and being a shitty version of Deadpool. And then he was the Green Lantern, which obviously didn't show up actually in that movie. There was probably some.
It's a DC property.
Very like a very small. There might have been something small in there, but yeah, I mean he played the Green Lantern and everything as well. And Hugh Jackman there is no other Wolverine.
No,
but they did show Henry Cavill as Wolverine in it, and I would totally accept him being Wolverine if they decide to go that. But it needs to be R-rated and super violent, because that's what the comic books were.
Yep. Also, there is my favorite scene from that movie is when he makes a comment about Blade specifically, and he looks at the camera and it hangs for a minute, like shots fired, because like Fox mismanaged all their properties, and now that Disney owns Fox, they could do all this.
I think he was like, there'll never be another Blade. Right. And then he like looked at the camera or something like that.
Yeah. And it's like, it hangs, man. Like Disney, don't do new Blade, do Wesley Snipes.
But he also like breaks the fourth wall, because that's what Deadpool does. And said about Blade, he's like, oh, well, you never liked me. Calling back to Blade Trinity when Ryan Reynolds was in a Blade movie. So it was like, not even Deadpool related, that he just was like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's packed with that shit, and it's awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up.
Just a fun one.
Yeah, okay. My number 12 is one that I don't think you caught. It's called The Last Stop in Yuma County. This is about as close as I think any director's gotten to making a Tarantino movie, because it is basically like there's these robbers and they rob some money, and it's in the back of this car. And so throughout the movie, these characters arrive at this gas station, and the gas station is waiting for the gasoline to be delivered, so they can't fuel up. So they all go inside of this diner. So throughout the movie, all these characters are arriving at this diner. Let me see if I could pull up the name of the actor.
They wanted to like rob everybody or something, right? I think I heard of this movie, but I did not get to see it.
Yeah, let me pull up the actor, because he's Jim Cummings. So Jim Cummings has been in a few movies over the past couple of years that are underrated, and he's a very good actor. Anyway, they go into this diner, and then the bad guys freak out, and they're like, "Oh my god, we gotta like make sure that the woman's husband is a sheriff, and we gotta make sure that she doesn't call anybody." So they cut the phone cord, and then some of the characters know that they're the robbers, but then other people start showing up that don't, like this old couple. So about halfway through the movie, there's a shootout, and everybody dies in this shootout except for Jim Cummings. So Jim Cummings, being the only one alive in the diner, he's like, well, maybe I could take the money now. So he tries to take the money, and then stuff happens, and by the end of the movie, there's like nobody lives at the end, and it's just very Tarantino-esque, you know. It's like this dirtbag diner in the middle of nowhere, and
I like that.
yeah, it was a
I'll
cool
have to check
movie.
that out.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. Number 11 for me. I don't think you've seen this one. Some of this you'll notice it's like all Shudder based, believe it or not.
Shudder
I
had
told you,
nailed it this year.
Shudder did a bang up job this year. So number 11 on my list is called Baghead.
I've heard of it.
Horrible name for a fucking movie, but it takes place in like this British, like, I don't think it's a pub necessarily, but like this British hotel maybe, that this girl like inherits from her father, who she kind of was like estranged from. And she shows up, she has like no money really, so her friend like lends her money to go do this thing, to like collect on this house. And she basically finds in the basement this like witch that lives in this wall. And she like brings her out and like is in this chair and has like a bag on her head. And when you pull the bag off her head, she'll like look into like your past and everything, and she'll take that like shape of like maybe a person that you're missing, or like that you loved or something like that. And she's supposed to now be the keeper of this like witch in the basement. um and obviously things go awry. Somebody's trying to like buy the bar or hotel or whatever from her. Um and this guy like shows up, and he's like, I want to give you money because I know this witch is in your basement, and like I need to see my wife. And like all this other stuff that happens, and just it was done beautifully well. I think it's like a British film, so another foreign kind of film, I guess, if you will. Still in English, but still foreign film, and just very much enjoyable, very different kind of movie. I wouldn't say it's overly scary for a horror movie, but I'm a sick fuck and I don't really get scared by horror movies in any capacity. But beautifully done. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. That one I'll have to add to my list. I want to watch that, especially after you have your
Yeah, I
glowing.
believe that's on Shudder. I
Okay.
believe it's on Shudder. So,
All right, my next one is The Bike Riders. Is my number 11. The Bike Riders, directed by Jeff Nichols. I love every Jeff Nichols movie, and I'm just gonna call them all out here because I love them all. Take Shelter, Mud, Loving, Midnight
oh,
Special,
Mud
Shotgun
was good.
Stories. Yeah, these are all great movies. And this guy does not get enough credit. The cast. We got Tom
Believe it or
Hardy.
not, Matthew McConaughey said that Mud is his favorite movie of his that he's ever made.
It might be my favorite movie he's ever made too. I mean, he's really good in it, and it's a powerful movie. We got Tom Hardy, Austin Butler, Jodie Comer, Norman Reedus. We got Boyd Holbrook, Michael Shannon. This movie's fucking great. It's about the Tom Hardy's character wants to start a biker club, and it's like in the 50s, I think. It's like right on the cusp of that like cultural transition, and so they all have these bikes, and they want to like make the bike club, but then there's like it becomes a criminal enterprise at some point, as it often does, and not everybody's down with that. And it was just like it's like all of Jeff Nichols' movies. They're just so interesting. They're colorful, you know.
Unfortunately, this is one I didn't get to see this year. Just lack of time, I will say. I don't think I had as much time this year as I had last year to watch movies. So that's where you would say my list probably lacks. There's some movies there that probably could have made the top 15 that just didn't, because I just didn't have as much time. But that's one that's on my list that I'm going to have to watch. I think it's on Peacock now, so I can definitely watch it for free.
Yeah, Tom Hardy just gives this performance like he's like addicted to the idea of a biker club, and he loses the interest of other people throughout the movie, but he turns into basically a gangster. He wants to be that. And that era of that was like the very buttoned down, like our society is very much like a post World War II society, and then these are the generation that came after the Greatest Generation, and they're a little rebellious, and they drink and they do crazy shit. And Jodie Comer is like an amazing actress, and she has this like accent in the movie that's so perfect. It's very innocent, and she's, oh man, shucks, come on, you know, and it's very like it's just a great movie.
1950s. Yeah,
It's so good.
she nails it.
Yeah.
Would you still consider Tom Hardy as an underrated actor?
To the general public, yes. For us, no. It's just that Tom Hardy, the movies he's in, that he's great in, he's got a mask on, right? Like he's in Dunkirk and they don't show his face.
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, even though he's in Venom and those are big movies, I don't think people appreciate Tom Hardy as we do because, you know, what do you think?
I don't believe he would be considered an underrated actor anymore. I mean, he's like, obviously with Venom, I saw the first one. Don't think I saw the second one. But they're MCU movies. Like
they're terrible.
They're that cookie cutter garbage. But like you put him in, like you said, in Dunkirk. The movie Warrior was unbelievable. And he was in that. I don't know if you ever saw that. Like that's like an MMA movie.
Don't forget Bronson. Don't forget
him and Joel Egerton. Oh, Bronson was awesome. Like he's really been doing it for quite a while. And he's done some like stupid kind of like rom-commy movies. What was the one with him and Chris Pine where they were both like CIA guys or something like that? Like, you know, and some girl was like pining over both of them. I think it was called War of Love or something, or Love of War or something. Yeah, so he's done some like dumb chintzy movies, but for the most part, he does some bangers.
Lest we forget, he was in the Dark Knight Rises as Bane. I mean, he turns in an amazing performance in that movie, and again, he's behind a mask.
But also, he does TV. Like he was in Peaky Blinders, which I actually didn't see, but I've heard great things about it. I actually want to go back and watch it. I did try before and didn't get into it, but I just probably didn't give it enough chance. And then he was also in a show on FX called Taboo. Yeah. And it only did one season. They were supposed to do another season. He said he's still kind of open to it. But they haven't. And it's been, I don't know, probably 5 years or so since that show came out, but it was unbelievably good. And he shouldn't be considered underrated anymore if he is still considered underrated by people.
Well, and then to bring it back to the bike riders, like I don't think this movie set the world on fire. Jeff Nichols movies usually don't. Go watch every Jeff Nichols movie. Go watch Loving. Go watch Midnight Special. Go watch Mud if you haven't seen Mud.
There's some there I'm definitely gonna have to watch because I haven't seen them. But knowing that he's made these other movies, I'm definitely interested.
And Michael Shannon is in all of them, and those guys,
phenomenal.
Yeah, and those guys have been. And Michael Shannon is the main character, the main actor in all those movies. This one, he takes a back seat. But
see, he is criminally underrated.
Criminally underrated.
Criminally underrated.
Yes.
All right, number 10 for me is In a Violent Nature.
Okay, we could talk about this one.
Is it on your? It's not on your list. I imagine.
It's not, but I'm willing to have this conversation with you because I did watch it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. So, very much, I believe what I said was that it was rehashing or like a retelling of Friday the 13th.
So you're
in
not,
my opinion.
Yeah, it's sort of like that, but I think you're not giving it enough justice because it's because of the way it's telling its story from the perspective of the killer. It's not like those old Friday the 13th movies. It's not campy for one.
Right. It's not campy. It's slow plotting. Like, you know, the killer's basically like, I'm going to catch up with you.
It's deliberate.
Like, yeah. I'm going to catch up with you. He just knows. He's unrelenting, powerful, strong, some really like interesting stuff. Like when he cuts that guy's arm off with the log splitter,
probably
and then like
best kill
cuts
of the movie.
His head off. Yeah, like you know, it was violent, fun. It just, I don't know, it did a lot. I don't know, like he cut that one guy's head off, I think, with a hatchet, and then like took it and like smashed a window in with the guy's severed head so he could open this door and get in. And then he's like dragging his body around, like the headless body, and he goes to grab like the axe or something like that. I think he ripped his head off with a tire iron. That's it. and then he drags the body into like so they're obviously in the woods, and in some wooded areas they have like these fire stations, right? So he takes him into this like fire station, and they have like a historical aspect of it, of like the old fire masks, which is what he ends up wearing, and like a hatchet and stuff like that. And he takes the guy's like headless body and throws it into the glass to break it so that he can like take the mask and stuff. It just, I don't know, it was done very well. Another Shudder film, I believe, in that regard, and very much deserves a sequel, which I do believe they're doing. And you're wrong about the best kill, because the best kill was the girl doing yoga,
oh my god,
like on the mountainside. So what he does is he punches a hole through her back and out her stomach, turns her around, and she turns around with her like mouth open, and he buries the other. He has like a 2-hook like thing on a chain, and so one was like through her stomach. He buries the other one in her head, turns her around, and starts pulling the chain through the hole in her stomach until her whole like body goes through that hole.
Yeah, it's wild. It's such
so
a wild
good.
kill.
And it was such an inventive kill. People were cheering in the movie theater when I saw it. It was I enjoyed it.
It's not, there's not a movie like it, because the monster is like a shark. It's a very slow. He's just walking, and you're following him for most of the movie. You're following behind him from his perspective, and then it does eventually switch to a woman, and from her perspective. I think the movie misses out on a great ending, because the woman has been through all this shit, and she's in the car with this woman who picked her up, and the woman's going on about like, oh, life's great.
A bear.
Yeah, some bear attack, whatever. And like the movie kind of just ends when I was waiting for him to come out of nowhere and attack them. And
but here's the thing. If you go back and listen to that conversation, the way that she describes the attack was actually the killer from the movie is who killed like her brother.
Yeah.
But they don't know about this person, right? So they think it was just like a bear, and she's talking about this like really gruesome like attack on her brother or something like that. And it when she's describing it that it was actually the killer and not a bear, but she doesn't know that. So it's like they do it very well. And like I said, for there being like no real actors in it, I mean, there's obviously some kids, because the impetus of it is there's this like medallion or something that's like hanging on a tree that they take, and that medallion was like his mother's when he was a kid, right? So and when they take that, that's when he gets up out of the ground, which he's just laying under with like a fucking straw hanging up, just like breathing through it. And he's just like laying there until somebody takes this medallion, and that's what gets him up out of his like grave and starts killing them. So
much like a bear, like a hibernating bear.
Yeah, and there's your like, because of the mother thing, there's also like your call to Friday the 13th.
Yeah, that's a good pick. All right, I'm going to pull up the cast for this next one. The next one for me, my number 10, is A Real Pain. It's with Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg. And so they're both cousins.
Ooh, yeah, I heard of this. Yeah, I didn't get to see it though.
Yeah, so they're both cousins, and their grandma dies, and they're both Jewish, and they go to Poland to see her house. And so the movie is just kind of about them doing this. Jesse Eisenberg is like really kind of pent up. He's kind of he's got a family, and he's very like conscious and very how should I say this? He's very polite. And Kieran Culkin is kind of the opposite. He's kind of like he's like a charmer. He's kind of reckless. He does crazy shit in public. Sometimes people like it.
That is his character, though.
Yeah,
like he's typecast into that almost. Like that's how he was in Succession as well.
So I'll say this:
he's like charismatic, but he's a dickhead.
Yeah, he's not really. He's sort of a dickhead in this, but he doesn't. It's not quite the same as Succession, because he does care about Jesse Eisenberg's character. The reason why this movie resonated with me so much was because it reminded me of my brother. My brother would be kind of the Kieran Culkin character. whereas I'm more of like the Jesse Eisenberg character. And I just thought about me and my brother in these different scenarios throughout the movie, and it kind of got me pretty kind of emotional because it doesn't always work out for them, and you reveal Kieran Culkin is going through the shit, and something happened in his past with his grandma, and she meant something to him, and he was living in her basement basically. And Jesse Eisenberg had made something out of his life, and Kieran did not. And then I'm not saying that my brother hasn't done that; he has. But I just thought about my brother, and it's a movie about dudes who really care about each other and about their lives, and I don't know. It kind of got me all I don't know
A little
emotional.
emotional.
Yeah,
I got it. Nice.
and so I recommend it.
I want to watch that. I'm a big Kieran Culkin fan just from watching Succession.
He's great.
Because other than Succession, the last thing I knew that he was in was Home Alone. So
Wow. No, Macaulay Culkin is in Home Alone.
No, Kieran Culkin is in Home Alone.
He is?
Yeah, remember the very first Home Alone where Macaulay Culkin doesn't want to spend the night in a bed with his cousin because he wets the bed?
No way!
He's the cousin who wets the bed.
Ah, shucks. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 9 for me, and this is a Nicolas Cage film. I have 2 of them on here. I'm sure you'll guess what the other one is.
Yeah.
Is Arcadian.
I haven't seen this, but go ahead, hit me.
Very unique film, end of the world dystopian type deal, where you don't even see what the monsters really are until towards the end of the movie. But basically, like, pollution started like wiping out people and killing people. And they say in there they don't know if these monsters came before or after like the pollution or what they really are. But Nicolas Cage lives out in like the woods in this like old house with his 2 sons, who, when at the very beginning of the movie, Nicolas Cage is like running away from something like something dystopian, really, and gets to his like 2 sons in this like house. It's in the middle of nowhere, and every night they have to lock down. They have to be home by sundown because these like monsters come out or whatever. And they know that they are in there, and the monsters are constantly trying to figure out a way to get in. But I guess they're not like super smart, but over time they kind of like start to figure stuff out. And they encounter this like other group of people who live somewhere, and the older of the 2 young kids starts to like fall in love with the girl who's like with this other group. So there's a couple encounters there, and then you start to see like the monsters and everything. And while Nicolas Cage has a somewhat like muted aspect of this movie, he's very good in it, and the monsters were original, if somewhat campy towards the end, I must say. I don't know. Do you want me to spoil them what the monsters kind of are? You want me to let you?
Yeah, go ahead.
See it. So they kind of look like werewolves a little bit, but they have like a square kind of mouth, and they go up and down like this, like a alligator.
Kind of like a Quiet Place monster.
Sort of, but they go chomp 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 chomp, and like you can the sound of it you hear it's almost like a, I don't know, like a engine rattling or something. It's like chomp 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 chomp.
Wow.
And at one point, like towards the end, they like blow up this house, and all the monsters kind of like gather together in this giant like flaming wheel and start like rolling down the road chasing them. It's very different, very interesting film. It seems a little wonky the way I just described it, but you have to watch it. I think you'll get it, and I actually think you'll like it.
That's why I love doing this, because we are coming out with all these movies that neither of us have seen. So
I don't think we've had anything on the list together.
We have no overlap.
I know in our top 3 we will.
We will.
I know for a fact we will.
We have overlap coming up, but
yeah, it's definitely coming.
It's not right now, because my next movie is called Snack Shack. This movie...
Ooh, I heard of this one. I didn't see it yet.
This movie is about these 2 guys. It's a 90s movie about these 2 kids. They're like teenagers, and they're like best buds, and they're kind of like little degenerate gamblers. So they get all this money, and they decide to open a snack shack at the pool, and they have a girl involved, and it's one of them's older than the other one, and they kind of get into like arguments over the girl, over the money, over the snack shack, right? Because like one of them gets involved with the girl and he doesn't show up, and then the other kid's got to deal with the snack shack, and you got all these shit kids wanting food, and there's the handsome uh lifeguard who they don't get along with at all, and it's lighthearted for a little bit, but I will admit that by the end of this movie, I was actually a little dusty-eyed by it because it was very nostalgic. I felt like, oh my god, I'm back in the '90s again. Like I'm a teenager in this movie again, and I just all the how they get around town, using whatever they have, bikes and whatever. I don't know, man. It was just a really sweet, cute, fun movie that I never would have expected to
Yeah.
hit me the way it did, and yeah, it totally hit me emotionally in a way I didn't expect.
A nostalgia piece.
Yeah,
I actually think this is the least amount of overlap you and I have had in the last 3
I think
years.
so. Yeah.
Okay. My number 8 is The Substance.
I got The Substance high.
Higher?
Yep.
Okay. Then give me your number 8. We'll talk about The Substance
Okay.
at the next one.
My number 8 is Horizon Chapter 1 with Kevin Costner.
Wow. This is another one I didn't get to see. And I will say its long run time has been a detriment for me because I know it's like 2.5 to 3 hours long.
It has this problem. It's not a problem, but it feels like you're watching a miniseries, but you're watching it with like 3 episodes.
Well, you are, because it's going to be in 4 parts.
You're right. So,
but each one's going to be like 3 hours long.
So it's a great Western. It's got great scenes. It jumps around to different parts of the story. So you've got different plots going on, which is why it feels like a miniseries, because you've got a character that's introduced like 2/3 of the way through the movie, and that character is going to have a plot through these other 3 movies, but you are only getting part of it in this one movie. But it's a great fucking Western. It's got great action. There's some crazy shit that happens in it. It jumps around. So you've got like the cavalry, you've got the Native Americans in the area. There's all these like settlers. There's all these different things going on, and Kevin Costner is great in it. But Kevin Costner doesn't make the movie about him. He's just sort of one of the roles in this overall story about like the Great West and the expansion, and then at the end of the movie, it shows that the other 4 movies are there, so you will get a conclusion to this story. I know it didn't do well at the box office, but I am like jonesing for a good Western, and it's perfect. It's so good.
It hit its stride on when it hit Netflix, I think. People really started watching it, obviously, because it was free, like if you pay for Netflix. So it, at one point, was the highest streamed movie on Netflix, I think, for like a couple of weeks. Because it's not every day that you get a movie that's only been out for like 5 weeks to come to Netflix, right?
Bombed,
so like, yeah, it definitely bombed, but it's seen a resurgence since then. And now they actually, I believe, just said that they might actually still release part 2 in theaters, which I think they were rethinking that initially, but since the streaming's really picked up from it, that they intend on potentially releasing part 2 in theaters. So we'll see how that goes. I'm definitely going to watch it. I think part 2 comes out this year or next year.
Yeah, I don't know when it comes out. After it bombed, it was like all unclear. I'm just here to evangelize the movie because frankly, you think it's a 4-part movie, and all 4 parts are going to be like 2.5 hours long, and you're like, is it going to cut corners or whatever? Is it low production? But no, it's high production. There's like sets being burned down. There's buildings. There's action. You get all of it. And
so I think Kevin Costner put a lot of his own money into this.
It shows,
so
dude.
For it to bomb, like that's tough. And he left what's considered one of the most popular shows to ever be on TV in Yellowstone
to do this.
To go and do this. Like, this is a passion project for him. So it sucks to see it bomb because he's unbelievable, especially in Westerns. So, I'm definitely gonna have to give this one a watch.
Yeah,
It's tough because I'm on to this year's stuff, right?
yeah, well,
But I
this
have
could
to.
be
There are
part of it,
certain
but
movies I definitely have to go back and watch.
I just think that like if you're worried about like it being sort of like cheap or whatever, it's not. It's like it's all there. All it's great. It's great.
Nice. Number 7 for me. This is a movie that was absolutely on your worst movies list.
Oh.
So I'm gonna force you to talk about this movie, even though you hated it, and that is The Terrifier 3.
That wasn't on my worst
With
list.
the caveat that The Terrifier 4 is coming out this year.
That wasn't on my worst list. I just wanted you to explain to me why I was wrong about it.
Here's why you were wrong about it. Okay. One, when they start banning shit in Europe, you know it's got to be at least decent. Okay? It has to be. At least the violence and the gore is too much for these pussy ass Europeans. So it's at least going to be in my top 15. if you're getting banned in fucking France, you're probably going to be in my top 15. Okay, because they're pussies. It was so bloody, so violent. You know I love that. It's my forte. But what I loved about this movie was the practical effects.
They're great.
They are phenomenal. Whoever was responsible for doing the practical effects here, sure, it was overly bloody that you probably wouldn't see or whatever. Just, I mean, it needs to win awards just for the practical effects, but it won't because it's just a gore fest film. Okay. With this kind of movie, you just have to take it for what it is. You have to understand what you're watching, which I know you do, that you're just watching a gory movie. Some people don't like it. There was one part that was considered offensive, really, which is probably likely why it was banned. And it was like this girl kind of like masturbating with a piece of glass, like a broken piece of glass.
That was
and
the controversial part.
I believe that was one of the most controversial
I
parts
thought it'd
of
be the
it.
8-year-old getting an axe in the back, but
Right.
okay.
But believe it or not, other than like, obviously I went to see Wicked with my wife and everything. Other than like Wicked, Terrifier 3 was actually probably the most packed movie that I went to see this year. Like I couldn't fucking believe that it was packed like that. I couldn't believe it.
Kids were going to see other movies and then just sneaking into the theater.
Yeah. And I mean, you just take it for what it is. The storyline is whatever. It's kind of dumb, but they have another one coming. This Art the Clown thing is just now part of our universe, okay? And we should all be happy about it. And the fact that not many of these kinds of movies can even get made. Smashing success at the box office for very low budget. Same thing with, like, I talked about Winnie the Pooh 2. It had like $100,000 budget and made like $4 million. Like, that's pretty good return on investment, right? And that was a higher budget version than the first one. This did the same thing. He keeps getting a little bit more budget. Now, the director, they tried to tell him, like, well, we'll give you all this money. Like, we want to make your movie, Terrifier 3. But here's like the stipulations. And he said, go fuck yourself. I'll fund it. And he self-funded the movie, I believe, and then got picked up and it's making money. I mean, what more could you want than a director, instead of having to do a director's cut a la Alien 3 to actually make a real movie, tell the studio to get fucked, which this is what I love about it, and go and make your movie and make it to the best of your ability, and they did. And like, I mean, come on, I like kills. I love cool kills. When he starts like sawing that guy in half from his asshole and then like flips him over and saws him in half from his like ball sack, who doesn't love that?
Okay. I let you get it out. Okay, now it's my turn. Terrifier 3 isn't a gory movie, actually. There's probably a good 40 minutes in that movie where literally nothing happens at all, and some girls do makeup, right? Now, you have this brilliant premise for a movie. The opening is awesome. He's Santa Claus. The little girl's like, oh, we're gonna put our cookies out. And so he's like fucking with the cookies and the milk or whatever. But then he goes on this like terrifying rampage where he kills a kid, and they never do that in movies. You never see kids get killed in movies. And then he kills the parents, right? And you're like, oh my god, this is fucked up. But then there's the 40 minutes where nothing happens. The woman who jerks off the glass just like rots away in a bathtub, and he sits in a chair for like 10 years. And I'm curious to know what you think about that. Are you satisfied with the lore they're building around Art the Clown being like this malevolent force that just like doesn't, he could just sit for 10 years and get cobwebs?
That's just it. Is he was not initially the malevolent force. Yeah. So I think you're actually misconstruing the story a little bit.
Maybe I misunderstood it.
It was like the girl that was like flicking her bean with glass, right? She's actually like a malevolent force that was taken over by like a demon, and then infected him with like another demon because he was a serial killer prior to that. So it was like the perfect vessel for them to like get this demon to take over him. So because he is actually a demon, yes, he can sit there. And it wasn't like 10 years, it was like a couple of months.
Okay. Well, let's move on to my next movie. The dog threw me off a little. My number 7 is going to be The Apprentice with Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong, who plays Gary Cohn. And Sebastian Stan plays Donald Trump.
I wanted to watch this. I didn't get to see it. I wanted to watch it.
So the performances are incredible. The movie, he won't get nominated. I don't think Sebastian Stan is going to get nominated for this movie because of the subject material. He is so good as Trump.
I'm shocked he's not getting canceled.
It's Donald Trump. I know. So, this movie does something that it would be easy to dump on Donald Trump because everybody in Hollywood hates him, right? And so you could make a movie that's like really unfair, or it's just like it's kind of over the top. But it's more.
To be fair, they only hate him now.
They only hate him now.
They hate him prior to being president in 2016.
Well, here's the thing. So Donald Trump in this movie is, I assume a lot of this is probably real. He was collecting rent for his dad, and he was kind of going door to door and like doing this. And then he ends up meeting Gary Cohn, and Gary Cohn kind of like is this ruthless lawyer who sort of shows Trump how to be like him, and kind of be like a vindictive guy, kind of be like overly confident, kind of, how Trump's always been. I don't have to tell you what he's like, but Gary Cohn would eventually contract HIV, and the movie only covers Trump's 80s era, but there's a scene in the movie where Gary Cohn is sort of dying. He's in a wheelchair, and Trump gives him cufflinks, and I think the cufflinks are Trump's initials on there. And he's like, well, thank you for this gift or whatever. And then Trump's first wife is in this dining room scene with him, and she says, oh, these are fake. And it's like the guy's dying of AIDS, and even then Trump is like so cheap that he gives them like fake cufflinks. And that's just who Trump is, man. And so it just shows like how he became what he is. And after Gary Cohn leaves, he has the staff completely wash down all of the table, all the cutlery, everything Gary Cohn touched because he had HIV. And it just shows Trump to be like kind of a petty person who learned everything from Gary Cohn, and before Gary Cohn died of HIV. So yeah, man, it was a tour de force of acting, but for those two at least.
Yeah, that's another one. Like I did have a list of like 2023 carryovers into 2024. Like Iron Claw was one of them that I wanted to see. So that'll probably be another carryover of mine.
Iron Claw is a real gut punch, man. That movie's amazing.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Number 6 for me, I know this is on your list. Don't know where though, is Heretic.
Okay. let's not talk about it.
Okay.
Let's skip it. We're gonna talk about it. Um, number 6 is Alien Romulus.
Higher on my list.
Okay, we'll wait for that.
Number 5 on my list, Longlegs.
Longlegs is number 5 on my list.
Oh, perfect. Look at that.
Perfect.
Perfect carryover. Obviously loved it. Nicolas Cage is just on the comeback trail for sure. He's really carving a niche in like the horror suspense era for himself, which I don't think he's ever really done before.
Well, he's kind of doing a little bit of everything, because there was that movie last year where he played that guy who everybody was dreaming about. He's kind of like the goofy professor, and he's in everybody's dreams.
Yeah. So he's just like
He's just
on
doing
the
a lot of
comeback
crazy
trail. Yeah, and I think he's just like, I don't know, taking the reins off himself. Like, remember he did that movie Pig? I think that was like 2 years ago.
That's probably my favorite Nicolas Cage movie now.
Yeah, but people were calling that very much like John Wick with Nicolas Cage. It was definitely not that, right? But just a good movie. He plays the serial killer in this, well, sort of. He basically is like leading, I don't want to say a cult because it's not inherently a cult.
No.
Right? Like, having 2 people or followers doesn't necessarily make you a cult, I guess. But he's just this like cult-like figure, I guess you would say, and he's very pale and ugly and weird, and he plays that to a T. The girl, Micah Monroe, I think is her name, who was in what was that shitty movie? It Follows. Like, and she just apparently has this like horror resume that I wasn't even fully aware of. That's supposed to be pretty good, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch a bunch of her movies. But
she's
ratcheted
amazing in this movie. She is spectacular.
Mm-hmm. They ratcheted the suspense up in this film up to 11 for sure. And I think it was deliberately shot in a way where, because they make it seem like it's like this demonic thing, where off in the distance you're like, is that like a demon or like something like that, or like the devil, like kind of like, you know, looking over her shoulder or something. It's very dark and deliberate in that way, and I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like establishing shots that are really beautiful. It got compared to 7. It's not like 7, but
yeah,
it's,
I didn't agree with that comparison.
I don't
inherently, because 7 is just such a different monster. But just a very, very enjoyable film. This immediately I knew was going to be on my top 15 this year, and it came out relatively early. I think it was like February or March of this year when it came out. And I know you had a poor experience the first time you saw it.
This is why it was so hard to go back and watch it, because when I watched it in the theater, there was a stupid fucker who was sitting next to me, and every time he got a message on his phone would flash. The phone would flash. And I was like, you got to stop that. And like, he was talking to his girlfriend, and they were like, he was like doing that thing that couples do, or like they try to explain the movie to each other and they're like missing the basic parts of the movie. They're like, oh, I think he's the bad guy. That kind of like commentary. And I'm like, you fucking asshole. So like, I was like, I have no way to like watch this movie and enjoy it. So it took me about 8 or 9 months. It comes out on Blu-ray. I finally sit down and rewatch it in my living room all by myself, the way I needed to see it. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I get it now. And there's just the whole like the dolls being so lifelike, and them being the vessels for the balls that have like nothing apparently in them, you know, but they're, and then you find out her mom, you know, early on in the movie, she's in her cabin and she calls her mom, and her mom sounds very strange, but you can't tell if it's like dementia or if she's tired or if she's on drugs. It just is very unsettling, and but you don't know what's coming, so you just go like, I don't know what's up with this woman.
Well, and that whole time, because I think she calls her mom when she's in the house, right? And then she is like walking around the house with her gun because she thinks like there's something, and she gets that letter from Longlegs on her desk when she comes back. So he was very clearly like there in some capacity, but all while she's on the phone with her mom. And you're just like, this is such an odd conversation to be having. And then she comes back and bang, there's that letter from Longlegs. It was done beautifully well. I mean, he played such a creepy fucking serial killer. Like I mean, kudos. And then when he's smashing his fucking face on the table,
That was good.
and it, like, to kill himself, like, I guess, dude, that was probably like halfway through the movie.
He's not in it a lot.
No, he's not.
And the way
But he's the most memorable part of it,
well,
for sure.
and
Because the way he acts is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I was gonna say the way they dress him up. He's wearing what like like whitewashed denim. It's like so tacky and from like the 80s. He looks like somebody who came from a time machine, except for his face. His face is really fucked up looking.
Yeah.
But he's there's that scene where he's standing there with his luggage and the cops are coming and he just kind of like puts his hands up and it's all very strange. And then you eventually find out the connection between the mother, the daughter, and Longlegs. And you know, she wakes up in Longlegs' basement doll making area, and the movie could be rewatched many times and you could probably find many things in it
catch new connections.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the big thing, is like they put the connections out there in the open if you can see them. And like it's one of those movies you just have to watch a couple of times.
And there's the director is coming out with a new movie called Monkey, which is an adaptation of a Stephen King
short story. The Monkey.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see anything this filmmaker does ever again. Worth mentioning, this was A24, right? I don't know if it was or not.
I think it's a Shudder film.
It might be Shudder? Okay. So yeah, it's just...
Yeah, I think it's a Shudder film.
Boy, oh boy.
They had a year, okay? Like, they had a year. And there's probably, like, 2 movies on there from Shudder that I wanted to watch that I didn't get to watch. But they are leading the charge into horror right now. From last year up and then probably through this year, I would say.
So yeah, right, great movie.
Yeah. Highly recommend. Number 4 on my list is The Order.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
Okay.
Number 4 on my list is Dune 2.
That's higher on my list.
Okay.
Number 3 on my list, Civil War.
Okay. Go ahead. This isn't on any of my lists.
You didn't put this on your list?
No.
Wow. Okay. I went to see this in IMAX. You know, I know there was a lot of consternation about this movie because they didn't take a side in like...
They don't tell you what happened, basically.
Yeah, like, and they make the president be like very Trumpian, sure, but they don't take a side in that regard. They don't tell you who's responsible for the whole thing other than like he's taking this 3rd term and other stuff. And they don't really tell you how things started to devolve, you know, in the movie. But what's her face?
Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst
turns in an amazing performance. One of her best.
Kaylee Spaney was excellent in it, who obviously was in Alien Romulus as well. So she had a big year. The previous year, she was in Priscilla, she was very good in that. That was a A24 film.
Sofia Coppola.
Yeah, and you know, just unbelievably good. The action in it was great. There's different parts to it. Obviously, the Jesse Plemons thing is like probably the most well-known scene out of the movie.
It's so good.
It held its purpose, and what's funny is he was just randomly thrown into that scene because she was in it. The actor who was supposed to do it.
Yeah, he's probably like hanging around set, you know.
Like a week before, I think they lost the actor who was supposed to do that scene, and so she was like, "Can you do this?" And he was like, "Yeah." And it ends up being one of the most memorable scenes in the film, obviously. And like I said, the action scenes were unbelievable, especially towards the end when they're like storming the White House and everything. And it was done in such a way because they're photojournalists. So a lot of the scenes are of the violence. They're just capturing on actual photos. And, they have to use like older cameras because they don't really have like power in a lot of the country and stuff. So, just very interesting story. Alex Garland is an amazing director. He has another war movie coming out with like Will Poulter this year. That looks incredible. I will see pretty much any Alex Garland movie at this point.
I think that movie's literally called like War.
Yeah.
So let me pontificate on Civil War a little bit. I really liked that they don't take a side because it's not it's not about the sides, it's not about the politics, it's about the photojournalists. That's what the movie's about. So
Yeah,
I don't
agreed.
yeah, so tell the story the way you want to tell it. Now, it's interesting that California and Texas are allied in this supposed war, and that Washington, D.C. is difficult to get to because the president has like locked down the entire city and they're going to storm the White House, right? What I thought was really my favorite theme of the movie was that at one point they're going through a small town, and in the small town, it's business as usual. The shops are open. They're going dress shopping. And people in the middle of the country are just like not part of the Civil War. Whatever happened, they are not a party to it. And I found that to be really interesting. I will say I don't love movies that glorify journalists because I don't see journalists as heroes the way journalists see themselves as heroes. So there was a little bit of that in here, which kind of turned me off. But Kirsten Dunst is my favorite actress for like, that's just my favorite actress. So like, I think she does an amazing job in this movie. She looks so tired and weathered, like she's been through the shit. I mean, she just saw like a car bomb the week before they're in whatever. And yeah, it's a really interesting concept, interesting movie. I just didn't, it just didn't land with me. I don't know why.
I'm shocked it didn't even make your honorable mentions though.
It's not, I think I gave it 3 stars on my Letterboxd.
Wow.
I just
interesting.
It just didn't.
We
do
talked
it for
about
me.
this movie at length.
I saw it in IMAX,
like obviously in private and everything, and you seemed like open to it, like and everything, and now
I didn't hate
it.
it.
Like you closed off. Yeah.
No, I didn't hate it. I just, for me, it just kind of came and went, and like I said, the idea, all the ideas on that list are super interesting. It's just when you combine them all together that I just didn't. There's just parts of it.
Yeah, I get it. Doesn't make sense for you.
Like in my mind, I'm like, I'm a military guy. Why the fuck do I want these 4 photojournalists following me around anywhere? There's a scene where they're in the open field and they're about to storm the White House, and that one guy is like kind of crying and losing his mind or whatever. And it took me out. It didn't work for me.
Well, I think the reason why it was done that way is that historically, the U.S. has embedded journalists into
Vietnam,
back in World War II.
Yeah, even World War II.
Saving Private Ryan. Remember that?
Yeah.
So the U.S., in order to maintain like transparency, ultimately they've embedded journalists into the military. So in that regard, the coalition, like California, Texas, can't remember exactly what they called them.
The Western Alliance.
The Western Forces or whatever, to preserve the freedom of the press, were allowing journalists to embed themselves into their military tactics, right? Because they were going to overthrow a authoritarian president, right? Who was killing journalists and things like that at the time. Like they said in the movie, nobody's interviewed the president in 5 months or something like that.
Yeah, he's like totally isolated.
Kills journalists on site. So that's kind of the impetus for that, because it's been happening in the U.S. for forever. I mean,
well,
so they kind of had to put that in there, right?
This is our one conversation about it, right? So let me just throw this out there. There's not like a My Lai massacre in this movie. So like the photojournalists are there and they're capturing things that are happening, but there aren't anything. There's not like a dark event that they see, and I just think that is telling. I don't know. It just seems like
I don't think
there's
that's
an opportunity
true.
there.
I don't think that's true. In the Jesse Plemons scene, they're dropping bodies into that hole, right? And they actually said they're, because they're looking through the camera since it has an extended lens, and they're like, "Are those bodies wearing military uniforms?" And she goes, "No," which means they're just killing people that they don't agree with. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're military. And through the whole movie, you see guys fighting in like Hawaiian shirts. You see
Yeah,
guys in military outfits, and you never get a sense of who the bad guy is. And like in the one scene with the sniper and everything, and he literally says to the reporter, because the reporter's like, well, who are you, like, who's giving you orders? And he's like, nobody's giving us orders. He goes, he's trying to kill us, so we're trying to kill him.
right.
And that's where the movie just makes its point that it's not going to take a side. It's just that they're killing us, we're killing them. Full stop, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's why it is done the way that it is. I understand your issue with it for sure, but that's just I believe the reasoning behind that.
And I believe you make great points as well about it. It's totally fair that you feel that way about it. I think so.
Yeah, overall enjoyable film. I think you enjoyed the movie as a whole. It's just not good enough in your opinion, probably.
And that's okay. Where are we at?
3.
Okay, so 4 for me was Dune 2. Okay. My number 3 is The Substance.
Okay.
So we could
Shocked it made this high on your list. So it's typically like considered a body horror movie, which I actually disagree with for the most part. I didn't think it was really a body horror film.
it's a body something.
Yeah.
So first of all, one of the reasons why I love this movie so much was that I often talk to you about movies that have a sort of space that the film is confined in, and that space can carry the weight of a movie if it's done well. And
Yep.
the apartment in this movie is awesome because it's got Demi Moore's giant portrait in the living room. And Demi Moore is like kind of washed up as like this aerobics instructor on television, and she wants to be young again. And so there's this thing that she can do, and it's never explained why the thing exists, but she goes to this locker room in the corner of whatever in LA and finds this substance, and you inject it, and it's got rules based around it. So you can only do this for a certain amount of time. And then her younger self, Margaret Qualley, is sort of like, they can only be away from each other for a certain period of time, and
It's like
then
a week.
yeah, and then the body damage starts happening to the body that's like sort of the parasite or the host. That's kind of the relationship they have. And every time Demi Moore comes back, she sees Margaret Qualley has done something horrible. So the apartment gets filled with booze bottles. The billboard outside of the apartment is her and Margaret Qualley and like her new show. And so that part of it, the bathroom, the hidden room they build for the body, that was really interesting to me. I loved the who's the actor? I'm sorry, I forget.
Dennis Quaid.
Yeah. There's a scene where he's munching on shrimp, and it's just fucking disgusting.
So yeah.
And
he plays this like gross character, and the whole thing is very campy. Like when he's there, like basically everyone outside of her has this like really campy quality, right? Because they're like kissing her ass or whatever, because she's like a star and stuff, and they're just like not real people. They're just like these
it's a Hollywood thing.
Believe Hollywood to be, right? Like,
yeah.
Where everyone's like super fake and everything. But they play it up to this like campy nth level. And I thought it was very well done. The merge at the end where they both keep fucking around and like they become this like giant monster, and she has like one tassel of hair left and like her fucking teeth are over here.
Yeah, it awesome.
But I'm not saying that took away from the film. Okay, that didn't, because it was part of it. It's part of what made it great. But at the same time, I think it prevents this movie from being that like, man, that was amazing, because this like monster that you put together at the end is just kind of chintzy, right? Like I just don't think you're expecting it.
Well, see, okay, so because David Lynch passed away recently, it's kind of a Lynchian movie, because David Lynch always took the worst aspects of Hollywood and maybe he would like subvert it in his films, but it was always there. And this is kind of like that. I don't see the monster at the end as being sort of like, that means that the movie's not really about that. The movie's about Hollywood and how awful Hollywood is. And
Yeah.
so that's like the Demi Moore character. First of all, I love that they don't pull any punches on anything, right? So like there's like full frontal and gore and weird stuff going on, and but that it's Margaret Qualley being the new younger version of her, and that's a very Hollywood story. Demi Moore is an older actress now. She's not in a lot of movies. She's been replaced by a younger generation of actresses. I mean, we see her a lot, but
she was in Landman.
Yeah, you get my point, my general point about, I mean, this is a theme that goes all the way back to like Sunset Boulevard, where like the old actress is washed up and she wants to recapture her old glory. And in Hollywood, men are treated differently than women. And
yeah, no, I like that aspect of it. I think it calls it out very rightly so. And that everybody, like, you just have to strive to be like the best looking in Hollywood and everything. I mean, we see it with Sydney Sweeney getting like shit on, saying that she's like too fat and like all this other stuff, which obviously she's not.
But that's
almost exactly what that movie is kind of talking about. And that like you age out after so long of Hollywood. So I think it was definitely a good storytelling in it was unbelievable. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley both were really good in it. And then you throw in like the monster at the end, which I liked. I thought it was funny, especially how they were all still treating her normally, even though she's this like grotesque like monster.
I mean, there's like a metaphor in that, right?
Yeah, there definitely is a metaphor in that. And I think it was a very, very interesting film. I would 100% recommend people watch it, which is why it made the top 15. For me, it just wasn't as high. I thought that there were more interesting films that just did different things. But, it's a matter of taste for me, but definitely a good movie.
It just hit everything for me. Okay.
So that was number 3 for you.
Yep, that was my number 3 movie of the year. Okay,
number 2 for me, Dune 2.
All right. This movie is fucking great. This was my number 4. Go ahead.
It hits everything. I mean, everything you would want from a sequel to a movie. And I thought it was interesting how it became more of an action film, whereas the first Dune movie was more of like a political game, like the chess pieces were being put into play.
I actually like Dune 1 more. Believe it or not.
Did you?
Yeah, but not to say this is a great movie. This is an amazing movie.
And let's not, and fuck, this movie didn't even make my list, and it should have. A Complete Unknown. It just came out very end of the year. I kind of already had this list made, but it should have made it. Timothée Chalamet is the best up and coming actor in Hollywood right now, without a doubt. Like it can't even be questioned.
Like you can't take him
phenomenal.
At like he's at the Met Gala and he's wearing all this weird shit, right? And you're like, this guy is fucking like, he's all like floofy and strange. He's a strange person. And then you see him in these roles and you're like, oh, this dude is amazing. And his Atreus is his name, right?
Atreides is his last name.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is great. Rebecca Ferguson in this movie, great. Javier Bardem, great.
Oh man, he's such an underrated actor too.
Yeah. Austin Butler, kind of weird but great. Austin Butler is like completely out of his normal in this.
But the visuals in this movie also were unbelievable.
Oh my God.
Like we talked about Furiosa, and like there's something about shooting in a desert that kind of makes like things a little bit weird on camera. You didn't have that with this at all. I don't know how much of it was like on a green screen or whatever.
It seems like not very much.
Yeah, I mean, just unbelievable action scenes. They were all like really good. The story of it was excellent. I mean, if you harken back to like the very first, the actual original Dune,
Harken,
it, like blows it out of the water.
Is that a pun?
Back. But going back to like the visuals, Austin Butler, you mentioned, when they have that like fight scene where all the other Atreides family members, like the lesser Atreides, families, are there like fighting Austin Butler, and it's all in like black and white, but it's because the sun that they have like makes it that color. very, very cool. Like I'm glad they did it that way. The final fight in the movie is kind of like a one-off. Like it's a little bit of a throwaway. Like it's done very well, but it's not the penultimate like fight scene that you're kind of expecting, right?
It
They
feels
do
like a
that,
blip in a bigger story.
right? They do that earlier in when they start attacking, like the like fortress or whatever, like the city, at the end. Um, like that fight happens, and that's like a lot bigger of a fight. Um, they set up the third one. They said they are going to do the third one.
They flash back to Anna Taylor-Joy in this at one scene,
Which is weird because that ends up, it's like his sister in the future. And so like they say she's in this movie, but
she's
not really. She's a voiceover for like a baby in his mother's stomach, and then there's one scene of her. One.
We haven't read these books, so I can't tell you anything about whether or not. All I know is that I'm assuming this is faithfully adapted.
I have to say, I feel scared for the third one. I must say, I really do, because it's easy to just start letting shit go and like not paying the attention to detail and not doing what you did previously, and now he has to deal with like what's her name, Florence Pugh again.
Okay, we should. I want to talk about her in a second.
So.
Are you good on time, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, Christopher Walken in this movie is great. By the way, I don't want to forget him because he's not really in it a lot. The thing you're right about is that the first movie didn't do well box office wise, but it came out on HBO Max and people got to watch it, and they're like, we finally reached this point where you can make a weird ass sci-fi movie and people will actually go to the theater to see it. And there's ideas in this that are incomprehensible to normies. Like the spice, the concept of spice. It doesn't. It sounds crazy. It's like, oh, you could tell the future, and you can transport ships through it, and you can use it to control.
It's like both a drug, but it's also
fuel
for fuel. So
it's very strange, and yet I see what you're saying about the third movie being like a trap, but maybe the studio is just going to let him do this thing all the way through, and that they can do everything. So. Yeah, because
I hope so.
There's weird shit in it. The ships have wings that buzz like they're like hummingbirds. That's not in any sci-fi anything. Like, that's weird, you know?
I think the one thing I've said is like thousands and thousands of years, like they have interstellar travel and they still fight with swords.
Right. And they have energy swords.
Even though they all have shields.
Right. They have, it's just like its own thing. And you take it on its own terms. As far as Florence Pugh goes, she, I think, is like the worst mainstream actress right now. Like, I don't think she's a good actress.
We're not fans here on this podcast.
I tolerated her in this. I think she was fine. Her costumes
wasn't in it that much.
Not in it that much. Her costumes were fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Like all the weird chainmail and all the like coverings and like the way the costumes in these movies are amazing. They're so cool.
Yeah. All of it. Like the scene, like the sets and everything that they had were just incredible. The CGI was incredible. I mean, top to bottom.
And they captured the horror of that.
Obviously, one of the best movies of the year.
Like that Harkonnen guy with like when he could fly and hover, right? Like speaking of David Lynch, David Lynch did Dune, and in that movie, it was kind of insane how they depicted that character.
That original Dune, like from what, the 70s or 80s, bomb. It was a bomb.
I don't think it was. I have to go back and look. It might have been a bomb. I don't know. There was something. No, I think you're right. Maybe it was a bomb. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. It's not a bad movie. It's just weird. But Dune has historically been something that cannot be adapted until it finally was. And so there is a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune, which I encourage everybody to go watch because it's a documentary about the director Jodorowsky, and he wanted to do a version of Dune that never got made, but he drew it all out and wrote this entire book. It's like this big. It's a book about the movie he was intended to make, and it's fascinating on its own terms.
Well, thankfully it was made.
It was made.
It made the list.
Yeah, this movie is and what's his face from Open Range.
Oh yeah, Josh Brolin.
Yeah, thanks to Josh
Yeah.
Brolin, you got a complete unknown, right? So
Yep.
yeah, it's a spectacular sci-fi movie. I loved it. It doesn't feel long at all, even though it is super long. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Good. Great film. You have a number 2, right?
I have a number 2. My number 2 is The Order.
The Order. Okay.
Man, this movie, dude. You threw it out randomly at the end of December, and you're like, "I'm gonna watch The Order," and I'm like, "Okay, what's this?" And then
I think that's the thing, right? Nobody even knew that this fucking movie was coming
nobody knew
out.
this movie was coming out.
It's Jude Law, who I couldn't tell you the last thing I've actually seen Jude Law in, but he's actually a pretty good actor, and I could watch him play this character forever. But it's also based on a true story. Also, Nicholas Hoult, who is another huge up and coming actor in Hollywood as well, and he's FBI, I think, DEA maybe, and he's like hunting down this like white supremacy group called the Order because they are like robbing banks and like killing people and stuff like that. So
they get the name
very
from
well done.
the Turner Diaries, which is a real thing. The thing about this movie is that it's all real. Like, it all happened.
Yep.
And,
oh yeah, it's all real.
Yeah.
Happened up in like Seattle area.
So these guys got together and they didn't like the white supremacy group they were a part of. So they went and founded their own thing called the Order. And they used the Turner Diaries as a guidebook for that. And so the Turner Diaries, it's like get your group together, get your money, and then start bombing the shit out of everything.
Yep,
And
government buildings, everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
They just became domestic terrorists, and this was all very, very real.
And Jude Law this is the best he's ever been, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
There's scenes where, like, there's that scene where he is up in that face of that one guy, and he's like grinding up against his face and like smoking, and he's like, he kind of like aggressively being like, "You better tell me the fucking truth." And he's got these nosebleeds, and he starts bleeding from his nose, and the blood gets on the other guy, and it's this weird. It's like a very intense scene, and it wasn't until after I watched the movie that I realized Justin Kurzel was the director of it. And I had seen other movies by this guy. He's Australian. He made Nitram and he made the Snowtown Murders. Those are two of the most intense movies I've ever seen, particularly Snowtown. It is one of like the most fucked up movies you can watch. This guy he can make anything look like insanely, you're on your edge of your seat the entire movie. And this movie just, oh my God, the amount of smoking in it, the most smoking ever in a movie.
Very, very little fanfare for this film, for sure. Like, it came out at the end of the year. I don't think a lot of people knew about this movie coming out, and I just saw it. Like, I saw it, I think, on like my A list, and I'm like, what is that? And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, especially because it's on a true story. And then all of a sudden it was on Amazon Prime, so it didn't really kill at the box office or anything. I watched it on Amazon Prime, and I was like, holy shit, this movie is really, really good.
Yeah, and by the way, a movie, I think a movie works for me personally when I think about it well past seeing it. I thought about this movie for like a week. Right after the movie, I went and watched documentaries on this subject because I was like, there's no way this happened. Particularly the Brinks truck or whatever robbery where they got on the highway. That was real, dude. And I was like, man, I can't believe that happened. I never even heard of it. And I've seen interviews with these guys now, and they were like, yeah, some of the guys say, yeah, this guy did killed some people. Some guys say no, and they don't talk about it. They might take it to the grave, but a lot of this was inspiration for the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yep.
It was a period of time in American history where white supremacy was a real problem. And now we say it, politicians say it, but it's not really. This was real white supremacy. They were like, it was just crazy. They were like, you gotta be pure white. I mean, it's in the movie, and it's really fucked up shit. And they put all the imagery in there. Movies don't put the swastika up, because they
Not
fear
anymore, no.
Because they're like, oh, we don't want backlash or whatever. This movie has it all like front and center because that's what really happened. And
yep. I mean, they had like little kids giving like the Sig Heil,
Mm-hmm.
like the arm and everything, because they were growing up in this like white supremacy group and everything. Like they went real hard on this movie, and I truly appreciate this film.
Yeah, and also there's the spouses. They all play a role in it too because they don't. Some of them accept it or they don't ask questions.
Right.
And there's a scene where the one woman is talking to the other woman in the truck. And I think she's pregnant. And it's very like, are you talking about this? And she's like, no, I'm not talking about this. And I'm just gonna sit outside while these guys talk about what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
And
No, bravo.
yeah, it was a fucking great movie, dude.
Highly recommend.
My number 2 of the year. What'd you have it? 8?
No, that was my number 2 was Dune 2. Oh yeah, I had it at let's see, where did I have that? 4.
You had it at 4. Okay,
Yeah. So we're close.
great fucking movie.
My number 1
Da-da-da-da.
was Alien Romulus. For an $80 million movie, it far surpassed I think what anybody could have done. Quickly becomes probably the third best Alien movie in the franchise. 100%. You know, obviously
100%.
the original and then Aliens. And ironically enough, it takes place between the two. So on the timeline, and just excellently executed. Kaylee Spaney was really good. All the special effects were unbelievable. The story was really good.
Special effects. I mean, the CGI of that ship hovering above the planet was like amazing.
Oh yeah,
it's so
unbelievable.
haunting.
And then like at the end when the monsters, like, you know, she's hanging from like the rope, and like the monster's there, and they cut to her like actually hanging there instead of in her mask. There's no sound because it's space. So like just little things like that where you're not hearing anything from the ship because it's in space and there's no noise. Like that was always one of the things from the Alien franchise, right? Like in space, no one can hear you scream.
Mm-hmm.
It was like always one of the things. So not having the noise or anything like that was just superb. The monster reveal at the end beat out obviously things like Alien Resurrection. It beat out Alien 3 because you had like the bull or the dog alien in that one. You know, they actually had like a 7-foot tall like
Man,
basketball player play the alien at the end. And Kaylee Spaney's so small. You know, the guy who played Andy the android was unbelievable
so
in
good.
it. Just overall phenomenal movie. I saw it twice in 2 days in theaters. Should have seen it 3 times. I obviously collected all the all the pockets
we've got all
and
our
stuff from
alien shit here. I mean,
yeah, I mean we're alien stands here on this podcast.
Everybody
for sure.
drink.
And it's just, I mean, bravo to this movie. They already kind of are like greenlighting a Alien Romulus 2.
And there's a show coming out.
Right. Alien Earth coming out, but Fede Alvarez, who, you know, did Evil Dead remake. I mean, I don't think anybody was expecting this from a horror director, but he took the franchise back in that horror direction, which we haven't seen in such a long time.
Yeah.
Because even Prometheus and Alien Covenant didn't do those things.
Because those are thinking man's aliens, Brad.
Sure. But it just really... It really just hit a home run and hit the mark. So
I obviously want to praise it too because it's my number 6. But you know, there's a lot of criticism around this movie from a lot of people, and they said all this movie is fan service. And I'm like, you don't understand. That's what I want in an Aliens movie. I want the fan service. Give me the face hugger scene. Give me the body horror. Give me all of that because. Even the android, they brought back the actor who's since passed away, but he's like a puppet or whatever.
Who played Rook.
Yeah. Like that character is very evil in this movie and very...
You know, they actually remastered it now because they said like on the original release, the CGI wasn't really good enough. And so to like honor him, they ended up redoing it with like a puppet actually that looks exactly like him. So and then they kind of layered CGI on top of it. So in whatever like reprints or re-releases of the DVD, it should look better.
And I like that in Aliens movies too, because like in Aliens movies, the xenomorph is a villain, but there are other villains as well,
Right.
and he's a villain. But like, I just thought that whole thing was awesome. I loved the music or the lack thereof. I liked that they explored the planet. Like we had never seen people that were like on the drilling planet, and like
Right.
they're like, oh, the company doesn't want you to leave. You have to work another 5 years. We've never seen that
Right.
before.
But also they brought in elements of Alien Isolation, which is a video game. It's not even technically in like the Alien canon of from the films. They brought in elements of Alien Isolation, which I played and
Right
beat like
before,
to
yeah,
its entirety. Yeah. And it was such a phenomenal game, and it's been out for like 10 years, right? And
yeah,
it's
it's
just like
old, yeah.
it's like, oh shit, this game's actually really, really good. And to bring in elements of that and make it part of the universe now, it was so smart. Like, you know, in Alien Isolation, what you do is you go up to like a phone to save, and every time you're about to encounter like real danger, you have a save point that you can use. Well, in the movie, anytime you saw the same exact phone from Alien Isolation is right before they got like attacked by something.
Yeah, that's so like again, the people who are criticizing this movie for being fan service, they don't haven't watched every Alien property or done every Alien thing. They don't get it. I just
Mm-mm,
don't think they get it.
mm-mm. Like you said, you want the fan service. I bet you those same people look at Deadpool and are like, "Oh, this movie's so great."
Perfect
But
example.
but Deadpool was fan service. That's what it was. But that's what you wanted from it if that's what they were going to do. And
And
it's like
I
they
want
knocked
that
it out
for
of the park.
Alien. I want
Right.
that. Yeah, because like
Right.
say what you will, there's never been a bad Alien movie, of course, from my perspective. But yeah, they have tried other things, and they this is what a common criticism. Oh, they just went back to the well again. They got back to something that they haven't done in so long.
Right. They added the horror element back to it. And I think that this movie bridges the gap, and why there's fan service is because it bridges the gap from people who are fans of the original movie, and they're bringing in new fans to the franchise.
And that's okay. And
Yeah.
also, it gets done poorly all the time. You see it in Star Wars. It gets done
Right.
poorly all the time, and this was not
Right.
done poorly at all. And
That's
this,
what I mean. Anyone who's saying that this is fan service, I guarantee you watches shit like that, like Star Wars and Star Trek and like all this other stuff, and they are like, oh, I love this, it's great, but all it is fan service. So
but
like, if
not
you
not
hate
good.
fan service, then shut the fuck up. Like, then don't watch those other things. But I guarantee you just hate this because it's a horror movie.
There's probably an element of that. Fede Alvarez, give this guy all the keys. Let him
Yep.
make anything he wants because everything worked. And if he could do it again and bring back Kaylee Spaney, she's
Yep.
really. I mean, she's been mentioned a lot on this podcast, but
It's important to know too that like um Ridley Scott actually really loved this movie, this version of Alien.
mm-hmm.
So he was also a producer on it, and he said he would not have given the green light if he didn't think it was going to be good.
That's all you need to
So
know. The
uh,
father of the
right,
franchise endorses it.
exactly, and you know that's all that you really need. Like I said, they're already looking at doing another one. Um, Obviously, the show's coming out on FX as well, but they basically want to theoretically, you know, she was on her way to Yavago or whatever, that planet that's outside of the system where they don't allow androids. And they think that there could be like some kind of crossover from Alien Covenant to the next Alien Romulus, where maybe she gets to Yavago or whatever, and um, David has already landed there and unleashed like his alien colony there.
Mm.
Like, so there would be your like tie-in to past films as well. And that would be very interesting to see, because then you would have to have Kaylee Spaney versus like
Michael
David.
or David. Yeah,
Yeah,
Michael
Michael Fassbender.
Fassbender. Yeah, I love this movie, so I'm, number one for you.
I bought this
Totally fine.
Steelbook, and
You don't do stuff like that.
I don't die. Yeah, I don't do stuff like that. I bought the Steelbook, so
Yeah, I think after we're done here, I might go rewatch that movie. All right, on to my number one, Heretic. How should I talk about this movie?
I'm shocked that it actually made it this high on your list. It was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it, but I'm shocked it made it this high.
Oh, let's say where is it on your list?
I had Heretic. Let's see, at number 6.
Okay, Heretic is fascinating, and a movie has never been made like this before. So what hit me the hardest was like I have a sort of an internal philosophy about things being iterated on, and that you see it in all kinds of things. You see it in politics, you see it in film, you see it in religion, and this movie was the first movie I've ever seen where like it broke it down in ways that I thought were hilarious. The Monopoly board, iteration. Oh, there was an older thing that wasn't called Monopoly, and then the people who liked they made Monopoly, they ripped it off, right? And religion is that there's a foundation which is maybe like Judaism, and then all these other religions branch off of that, and they steal the ideas and they call it something else, but it's all goes back to this one thing.
Yep.
But the movie doesn't just do that; it makes you question if there is a right version, and that maybe one of those is right. Then it goes into what's the theory of like simulation theory. It makes you think about simulation theory as well.
Yep.
So like it says it's not, the movie's not telling you that there is one right answer, but it is saying simulation theory is an option.
That was very much a twist that I was not expecting watching it, that it goes that simulation theory route where he's like, no, we're all in a simulation and the only way to get out is to die.
Is that true? We don't know.
Right. Exactly. And it was a very interesting twist that they ended up taking. Hugh Grant was unbelievable in this.
He's so goddamn good in this movie.
Both the girls that were in it were really good as well.
Because one of the girls doesn't believe in being, they're Mormons, I believe.
Yes.
She doesn't buy it. And you get it because you just get it through like the way her character acts about it. And the other girl,
she's also been in the church longer and is just kind of like there because she feels like she has to be. And then you have the blonde girl who's like all gung-ho about it, and it's like her first, like foray into the field basically to talk to people about religion. And so their dichotomy is very interesting between the two of them.
And I want to note that because it's there are themes in the movie, and then there's the actual movie itself, where like there's a woman in the basement, and they're like, what the fuck is this? What's she doing here? And then she dies, and then she comes back. She drinks or eats some poison, and Hugh Grant, all throughout the movie, he's got this like diorama of the building they're in, the house with the basement, and he's moving the pieces around. And it's like, does he have an ultimate goal? Like, what is he trying to do here exactly? Because he has like this room full of all these books and paintings of Egyptian gods, and like it's a movie about religion, but like he's a heretic, or somebody's a heretic. I don't know who. It's open to interpretation. And then she finds out that he's been like keeping all these other women alive in the like deep in the bowels,
in cages. Yeah.
But there's this part where he took the bike lock and he put it on the door in that basement, and they locked their bike up at the beginning. It's a red bike lock, and so you're like, did this guy have this plan all along, or is any of it real at all? Because at the end, when she gets out, it's not clear if she got out of anything. It's not clear if she's dead. It's not clear if she is in simulation theory or any of that shit. and like it's such a thought-provoking movie if you just go in and go like, want to see horror movie, and then you're like, oh good, there's gore or like people die.
But that's the thing, is there was it was not an overly gory movie
Not at
in any
all.
capacity. There was one scene that was like relatively bloody when he like cuts that girl's wrist open and pulls out that little like thing. But did he actually pull that out of her? Was it in his pocket? And he's just like saying, "Oh yeah, this was her like chip." That's how you know she's like a plant inside the simulation, and that the only way to
Yeah,
get out of the simulation is to die.
and he's I guess he is the heretic because he's making all the other people, the other two women, question their own reality and what they believe in.
Right. I mean, it was definitely beautifully done.
And there's like
Another
the
A24 fucking
yeah
banger. I mean,
uh
again, we're A24 stands here, so I will watch pretty much anything that they put out for sure.
for sure. I also want to say that like just it is interesting when he has all the Bibles and he's showing the iteration of Monopoly next to the iteration of religion.
And he's like, "Oh, the Quran is like your."
It's like, yeah, this is the newer version of this, or like, and there's the locks on the house, right? So like again, earlier I was mentioning that like a space is a character in a movie if you could do it right. Well, the house is a character. Like it's got the locks on, they're all timed. He's planned everything ahead. He knows exactly what they're going to do. There's two doors. They both go down to the basement. They go down the same exact basement. Like all these things make you question like what is everything. Like you could really go into this movie and just go like just be an normie and go like I don't get anything from it. I watched it and I thought, oh my god, I've never seen a movie reflect how I feel about the world, because I see iteration in war, because I see iteration in communism, I see iteration in capitalism and technology, right? Iteration is like the theme of this movie. It's so fucking fascinating. It just captured me.
I think when it came together for me was this when he brought out the simulation theory part. Like, because before you're kind of just like, what's going on here, right? And then you get to the simulation theory thing, you're like, oh, okay, like I get now what's going on here. He has this like worldview that's obviously like you could see his worldview when he's explaining the whole like Monopoly thing compared to, and the different iterations of like the Bible and everything else. But it's like that simulation theory kind of like brings it all together.
It's a twist because go ahead.
Because that's your belief or disbelief, right? Because
right.
Your belief is you either believe that this is some kind of like religious thing where there's a resurrection, available to you, or the caveat to that is the simulation theory, right?
Which you get unplugged from the Matrix.
Right, which is completely like anti-religion, essentially. Like if you believe in simulation theory, you're essentially spitting in the face of religion.
But is simulation theory a religion? I mean, that's what the movie's saying is like, it could be, right?
Like, it very much could be, yeah.
But it never, but the best part is it doesn't tell you at the end.
Yep. You have to draw your own conclusions from it. And I think that's what made it such a good movie.
Yeah, it's not...
besides the acting. I mean, the acting in it was incredible. But you're right. The thought-provoking questions that it really raises for you, especially religion today, is, less and less people are engaging in religion and probably subscribe more to the simulation theory thing.
Or they subscribe to something, an ideology that is not religious, but it goes back to a religious framework.
Right. This movie couldn't have been made 20 years ago.
Probably not.
And this movie is for that younger generation that is kind of anti-religion and more like science-based. Like that's kind of what this whole movie plays on. And it was done very matter-of-factly and very smart.
Yeah,
it's a very smart film.
I've rewatched it a few times now because I just enjoy it's never saying that religion is bad or that it's not real. I mean, that's the thing about it. When you said it couldn't be made 20 years ago, I think it's because the A24 exists to allow storytelling like this.
Yeah, it's not giving you an answer.
I didn't.
And
Yeah, you should not have an answer at the end of this
Right.
movie.
That could be why people don't like it. It doesn't have a definitive ending, and you know how people like to have that, for sure.
I say
like
fuck
this
those
is what
people.
happened. Yeah, they don't like film.
I like they don't get the ideas behind it.
Right.
And like I said, there's never been a movie that reflected these sorts of things in my mind ever before. I might have missed something. I don't know. I've seen a lot of movies, right? Like, and I don't know. I gotta say, Heretic is the, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's groundbreakingly. I don't know, man. I'm still thinking about it to this day. So
I think we had such vastly different lists that kind of all came together towards the end, where our overlap hung, because those are just great movies, right? Like the back end of your 15's like, well, I saw this, you didn't, and I thought it was phenomenal.
yeah.
And so it gives us a list to play off of, where it's like, oh, I could go watch this and I could go watch that or whatever. But at the top of the list is where we saw a lot of overlap, because those movies are just fucking great.
Okay, so at the end of these, we usually do go through our list one more time. So if you would like to begin with your 15, and we'll just go back and forth.
Sure. Number 15, I had Kill.
I had Hundreds of Beavers.
Number 14, I had Azrael.
I had The Vordelok.
13, Land of Bad.
The Coffee Table.
Number 12 was Deadpool.
The Last Stop in Yuma County.
11 was Baghead.
The Bike Riders.
10 was In a Violent Nature.
A Real Pain.
9, Arcadian.
Snack Shack.
8, The Substance.
Horizon.
7, Terrifier 3.
The Apprentice.
6 was Heretic.
I had Romulus.
5, Longlegs.
5, Longlegs.
4, The Order.
Dune 2.
3, Civil War.
I had The Substance.
2 was Dune 2.
I had The Order.
And 1 was Alien Romulus.
And I had Heretic. So those are... Go see these movies.
Yeah, if you haven't seen them, check them out.
All right. Well, we've been going for a little bit, so I guess we'll just wrap it up here.
Yeah, we did the thing.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you next time, and we'll get back to normal business.
See you, pal.
Bye.